I was focusing on sound, but I didn't have a good sound quality, so I'm sorry for that. But Andrew, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'll start with scene placement. And it's my opinion, this is really almost one of the most important scenes in the stylistic and thematic development of the show that we see in this early second season. And a lot of it owes almost to how it's reconceived by Lynch on set. I mean, I went back and looked at the original teleplay, and the scene is written by Harley Peyton as really very simple, expository. She directs Donna toward Harold Smith, and the kid does a more mundane, like card trick, and then that's it. Um, but the way Lynch reconfigures the scene, I mean, really to me is almost like an inflection point for everything that comes. Because I mean, previously, any lodge spirit that you see in the show has been seen in like a dream or a vision or a near-death experience by just certain people. I mean, but with here you've got Donna, who's heretofore a very mundane type character. She walks in and is greeted by these spirits in broad daylight, and that's going to become kind of a norm for the series. With Mike introduced through Philip Gerard, and then Bob and the little man appear when Josie dies. Bob tests out hosts. And then, of course, throughout Fire Walk with Me and The Return, the other stuff directed by Lynch, we're going to see that more and more often with these spirits and also stuff like, Tulpas and Woodsman and so on. And it also, I think, really, because I mean, these first two episodes really are what I think of when I think of the visual language of the original series. Like the season two premiere is this very wild at heart kind of grab bag of flourishes, and then this one, with that scene in particular, I really feel like that and Ronette's dream cement that kind of free floating anxiety with the droning sound design, the really pregnant editing, a lot like a lot of Lynch's he likes to show you a character's face and then cut to a POV, and you see a lot of that. And he also elevates the scene beyond just being from Donna's point of view and shows you, like it starts with the Tremonds and later ends with the Tremonds. Like he elevates them to be just as important in the scene.
Joel, thank you, Andrew. Joel?
As far as the performance goes, I was really struck by the sense that the little boy is in control of the situation. Frances Bay, the old woman, seems nervous at times. It almost, and after Donna leaves too, she's like looking off, and he's always looking in the same direction. He never really breaks concentration. It's like this little observer off in the corner. And even the way, unfortunately, I think the clip cut off before we heard it, but even the way that he says, she seems like a very nice girl to the grandmother. It's like he's telling her his sort of judgment of the situation as if he's the authority there. I just find something very interesting about that. So that was the kind of the main thing that stuck out. I was interested to the fact that Donna is the one encountering them. I think it's one of the only times until maybe the return. I have to think about what's in the return, where, because I do think there's more of this in the return, but where like a character outside of just like Cooper or Laura, or I guess Josie is, no, because Josie's dead at that point. Like Cooper or Laura basically are the only ones who seem to usually see the spirits. Sarah, I suppose, too. Donna is like a very strange character to bring into that world. So seeing her reactions, and granted too, at the time this aired, it wasn't necessarily clear they were spirits yet. And that decision may not have even been made until Fire Walk with Me. Well, no, because by episode 16, we know they don't really live there. So yeah. Anyways.
I'm going to be a taskmaster as far as the clock goes. Colin, what were you looking at? And tell us some things you saw in 60 seconds or less, please.
I was looking at the use of shots, and I was actually surprised when I watched this in a more self-contained way, because this parallels the scene with Laura and the Tremont / Chalfonts and Fire Walk with Me in that regard, because it starts off with like a combination of wide or medium shots, but once they get to that proximity with the Tremont / Chalfonts, there's something about how up close everything is. There's something about like the use of sound. There's something that's foreboding in the air. And there's like a certain bit of knowledge that irreversibly changes the trajectory of Laura and Donna's courses. Like, of course, with Laura, she finds out that the man is under the fan, and she finds out that Bob is Leland. It suppresses it effectively. But then in the case of Donna, this is when she will meet Harold because of the Tremont/Chalfonts, and that takes her on a trajectory where he will end his life, and she'll feel this bearing responsibility for it. And also, that's not even going into the secret diary that Laura has. So I know my 60 seconds are up, but I can expand much further as we go on.
Yeah, I should have given you a few more because I don't have too many seconds to take up. I had a hard time hearing the sound. It was sort of a continuous, seemed to be sort of droning. I would borrow your word, foreboding. It's a scary scene. There's one or two moments of punctuation that make you just sort of sit back just a tad. There doesn't seem to be sort of classic Lynchian sound design, like trickery, not trickery, but just like really dazzling type things. But if I were to listen to it again in a proper way, I'm sure I would hear a lot more subtlety. But for the most part, it's rather droning, foreboding. I found this to be a very, very scary scene and confusing, as most of the scenes are. John?
Yeah, I chose composition. I wasn't even sure what I was going to see when I started the scene. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I did that because what fascinated me about Twin Peaks when it was first aired, and I watched that episode the night it aired, was how Lynch was bringing sort of the film sensibility to television. And television doesn't allow for a lot of that, really, because essentially the aspect ratio and the screens themselves in your house are small. And so the techniques then are to, basically close-ups of faces, over the shoulder shots, back and forth, etc. But Lynch brings this cinematic sensibility to it. And so you got this great, great shot of the entire room. You see Mrs. Tremond in the bed. You see the little boy. He's off almost in the corner, but he's there. You see the entire cluttered room that they live in. And so you get this sort of widescreen shot on a small screen. And I think that's very effective. You get another shot sort of similar to that later, almost at the end of the scene, where Lynch places the camera at the very end of the bed, looking all the way up the bed at Mrs. Tremond. It's almost in the background. Any other director would have just shot her, at a medium close-up kind of shot, but Lynch doesn't do that. And he does that, I think, because he's trying to create a larger world, a wider world on this small screen. And it's so powerful. It's one of the things that I loved about Twin Peaks when it was originally on.
This is one of those scenes that is just epic. Epic in its own way. I'm glad you picked it, Andrew. What is happening in this scene? Can you summarize the scene or tell us what's happening here?
So to me, yeah, we've got these lodge spirits, Mrs. Tremond and Pierre, essentially pushing Donna along. And like Joel says, it's strange that it's Donna. It typically won't be to the return when like the school principal sees Woodsman and stuff, and basically they're just seeding these the path to come for her. You should go see Harold Smith, and even other things that we wouldn't know at the time, like Jeune Homme Solitaire, in just this really creepy way that you don't understand the full weight of at the time, which is just kind of a cool touch.
So they're helpers?
I would say, as far as lodge spirits are, as far as that goes, yeah.
Yeah, because I've always had that feeling about like Mrs. Tremond as more of a helper than a harmer, but I think a lot of people don't agree with that. But that's just
like if they're agents of, it's like if they're agents of realization, sometimes you might not want to make the realization, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Gentlemen, any other thoughts on this scene?
I'd just briefly say, yeah, I agree with that, and I kind of think almost all the spirits, other than Bob, until we get to like the woodsman and stuff, are like kind of helpers in the context, like the little man, the Philip Gerard, certainly the giant is an obvious one, but even the ones who seem more sinister, you kind of get the sense, even if it's just for their own purposes of countering Bob, that they're on the side of giving Laura more information and stuff. But I know there's different takes on that.
And if I could say one last thing, just to like, if we're gonna move on,
We're not in a rush. Yeah.
okay, I just love how this Lynch, the way that he frames POV shots, you'll always see what the character is looking at, and it'll be off screen, and then it will cut to the POV, and just the way that draws you in, just really underscores like like he doesn't need a visual effect. He can just cut to Korn being there, and then it's not, and it draws you in because he creates so much suspense by framing his POV shots like that. And I also love how he cuts, so like the original teleplay doesn't say cut to interior, Mr. Tremonds says enter. Lynch chooses to cut away at the beginning and the end of the scene, which really just creates that sense that something important is happening here. Just two really great editing touches I love.
I'm wondering, Andrew, when you're kind of just watching film or shows casually, do you pick up on these things like kind of as you're taking it in, or is it more like in a second or third watch? Do you kind of see it
on a second or third,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because as we sort of divvy up the things to look at, it's almost an overwhelming amount of details that could potentially be paid attention to, and yet we kind of experience it, holistically, organically, which is probably the best way. So I'm not sure if to what extent there's value in what we're doing, but I still think it's an interesting exercise to sort of like tease apart some of the threads.
And actually, I just want to go with what Andrew was saying earlier, is that those first two episodes of season 2, I think that with Lynch directing those two, I think for me at least, those set up like the mythos of like what the original series really sticks with me. I guess, well, I'll talk about the season premiere in particular, is that I love how the mythos are introduced like pretty much right out of the gate. It has everything. It's like the comedy and the drama, the horror, like all within the confines, or at least primarily in the confines of a hospital, to show that like all these great emotions don't really have to be in these different locations. They can all just be like in close proximity with each other. But the next episode is where we start to build off from that. And with the Tremonds and Chalfonts, I think that was something that like really just kind of changed the course of like how I view these, like, I guess, Black Lodge entities from here on. And I know, we're going to try to keep it focused on just season 2 in this scene in particular, but I just want to reaffirm that I actually do agree with Andrew on those regards.
Can you say just a touch more about that when you say this kind of shifted how you were viewing these entities, like henceforth?
Well, I guess I'll start off with the season 2 premiere with the Giant, because I think a lot of people forget about it. But if you take away the dream sequence from the season 1 is a relatively normal show. Like, I don't like to use normal or weird when I discuss Lynch, but but the reason why I say that is that when Cooper's on the floor and the Giant says like the owls are not what they seem, I'll give you 3 clues. And then the Giant, he sees him in a recurring manner throughout season 2. Like, for me, that was like the first time I watch it, and still on rewatches, I just think like, wow, like this world just opened up so much more. And stuff that we see in Fire Walk Me, the Mark Frost books, The Return, that scene with the Giant, that really just opened that. And as far as the Tremonds go, I was saying that in the 60-second time slot that I had about how they change the trajectory of like these characters, and it takes them on irreversible courses as well, because had the Tremonds / Chalfonts not been there for Laura, she would have known to go back to the home to find Bob, like, under the fan. And then as for Donna, she could have easily, had it not been for the Tremonds and Chalfonts, that she could have easily avoided Harold, and this would have been like a whole ordeal of like not finding out this other facet of Laura, not bearing the weight of Harold's death, and all these other things that she would do in her investigation to find out what happened to Laura.
Interesting. John, do you want to weigh in? Shall we move to the next scene, guys?
I'll just quickly say, someone spoke earlier about, I forget if it was Andrew or Joel, but spoke about sort of the evolving nature of the show, which, are the Tremonds good guys or bad guys? They're good guys in this episode. They're bad guys later. That's only because the show keeps changing. And new people keep coming in, and Lynch keeps changing the direction. He doesn't want to do it that way. He wants to do it another. And I only bring that up because I think it's just fascinating. We're talking about trajectories and where the plot is going, but no one really knew where it was going. I mean, they knew a few episodes out, but they didn't know, and they certainly didn't know what Lynch was going to do when he stepped on the set.
When he stepped into the cafeteria and saw creamed corn on the menu for the day, literally.
Yeah,
That's the,
I heard
that's
that.
that's the beauty of the show. The beauty of the show is that it constantly was evolving, and it was this new thing, and that's why we're still talking about it.
My wife has a similar philosophy of life. She's just like, yeah, it's gonna work out. Don't ask me what I'm doing, but it's gonna work out somehow. You know, there's like sort of a faith that you just try to stay 3 steps in front of the bullet, and you know it's gonna work out eventually. One thing that's cool with the cream corn. By the way, I guess I have 2 things to say. What is that? We know what the Gormonbosia becomes, but what is happening there? Was it on the plate originally when Donna walked in? Because I'm thinking maybe it was never there. How is this? You can't hold corn like that and then have clean hands afterwards. Like, what is happening?
Oh, you're being way too literal.
Magic.
Magic, yeah.
It's all a dream.
Well, the Twin Perfect video, you know, the famous 4.5-hour Twin Perfect video. One of the best parts.
Once and for all, forever.
Yeah, it's Twin Peaks actually explained.
Well, one
really?
of his,
I'm sorry, I just had to put that out there.
No. One of his best things, I thought, in that video, he kind of makes an argument that different characters are sort of like avatars or stand-ins for different cinematic techniques or for different concepts, and he says the grandson is like a symbol for editing, because literally things can just appear and reappear, and you know, you could sort of, editing is like a metaphor for magic, so to speak. I thought that was a pretty cool part of his video. But it's time for Joel's. Is that okay?